This is a darling quilt called Rockabye, Little Rocking Horse. We're going to show you how to do this. Now, I put him on after I put all my blocks together on this quilt. It just makes it easier because here his rocking mechanism is below the block and his head comes above. And I could even quilt the whole thing and add it on later, sandwich it and quilt it if I wanted. Okay, I begin by making all of my dimensional pieces, and I Xerox my pattern, place it on top of 2 pieces of fabric right side together and thin polyester bonded batting. Then I place my pattern on the top, sew on my solid line, cut on my dashed line, and take the paper out. Now if it's sewn all the way around like this head, then I'm going to slit one layer and turn it through that hole. Now some of these pieces of this pony are long and hard to turn. So I'm going to show you a real quick technique done with this, just a restaurant straw, so it's a little stronger, a little bigger. And I put the straw up inside the piece I'm going to turn. And then I find the end, the opening of the straw up here, and I put, this is a paintbrush, but you can use a dowel or whatever will fit inside that straw to begin turning the fabric inside out and follow it like that. And then it's so much easier. For example, this part of the horse is the same thing here. I've taken the pattern off, the paper pattern off, and it's really hard to turn it through this narrow part. So if I put my straw up through the inside, find the end of the straw, put my dowel or whatever mechanism I'm using through that opening, and it reverses the fabric just beautifully. Now at this point I'm not using the straw. It can fall out. It's just to reverse that fabric. And then of course I've got my mechanism up there. I can poke out the corners and just makes it so much easier for turning. So on this particular pattern, I really recommend that technique. Okay, then we'll show you the next step we do with these parts. Now I want to make the hooves, and instead of piecing a little hoof on there, which would be tricky, what I'm going to do is I've got this wide packing tape, and I'm going to place it so that it's about the width of the, oh, maybe a little smaller here, the width of the hoof I want. And I'm going to make sure that the tape lines up with this same side like that. I'm going to use my fingernail and really get it to stick. Okay. Now I'm going to put a little dab of acrylic paint. I like to use artist acrylic paint, not the cheap stuff, because there's more pigment in it. And I use a dry brush. It's a little thicker brush for dry brushing, and I'm going to tap it. If I put a lot of wet paint on this, it'll seep under that tape and it won't be a sharp line. So I'm going to dab it and build up the color by layers of paint, trying to keep it not soaking wet around that tape. I'll do the edges so that they're colored. In this pattern, I tried to stay away from paper piecing or foundation piecing for those that struggle with that. I wanted a pattern that wouldn't have to foundation piece these hooves. So this is a great way to add that color, the little hoof variation. You use brown if you want. And there you go. Now I'll let that dry. Acrylic dries pretty fast. And what I'll have is this kind of thing where let me pull off this tape. And look at that. I've just got this great little edge. Oop, it kind of went under the edge a little bit there, so it's probably too wet on that. But even that will be okay. I might want to redo it and tape it and bring it up a little bit. But if I'm careful with the dry brush, it'll be nice, sharp edge. And that's what I want to do for the little hooves on this guy. Okay, here is a great way to mark this quilt. Now notice I've already put the blocks together, my border. I can even sandwich it with batting and backing and quilt it if I want. Sometimes that's a little easier before putting the dimensional pieces on. Now I want to mark where the pony goes on this block. And I've taken the paper pattern for the block and I've Xeroxed it and I've cut on the solid line like this and around the neck. And I'll place it, match it up on my block, and I'll mark where those lines are. This is just a great way to mark this quilt. Instead of holding it up to the light, mark where the head goes. Now, if I want the opposite facing pony, after he's all cut out like this, I'll just turn him over and mark it. And then the pony will be rocking facing this one. Okay, once that's done, and I've got the markings on the block, I'm going to take these parts and place the open edge along those solid line markings. And I've stitched a 1/4 inch seam and zigzagged. I can clip that little corner if I want. Once that's done, the raw edges are encased in there. These fold over. I can zigzag across here and tack them. And then we will be ready to put the rest of the pony on this quilt. Let me show you that next. Now we've made our dimensional pieces as shown before and colored the hooves. The front of the pony is overlapped on the back haunch, about 3/4 of an inch from this widest part of his haunch to the end here. That's how far it's overlapped. You can see it there. Now the openings of these that were turned through a slit are also whip stitch closed. This is whip stitched on. You can position the face, the head, any way you like. The ear is a square of fabric. The dimensions are given in your pattern, and you fold it diagonally, fold the 2 outside corners to the middle corner as such, and then you're going to fold it this way. And the ear is also placed behind the pony, and so the shape of the neck comes up and is like one line to the ear. Once that's stitched on, I will stitch his mane, which are the dimensions are also given. The fabric is folded in half, so this is a fold, and then I've cut the little slits, and I'm just going to whip stitch this also on the back like this, like that. And then his tail, I've wrapped it with thread in the middle, and it will be there. And then his little saddle, the open edge will be whip stitched to the back here and folded over like that. And then we'll be ready to put this pony onto our quilt. Now we have finished this block. You notice we put this part of the pony on top of the 2 legs that were sewn on separate. Now these did not have any batting added in them, so they recede a little bit more than the top part. And then I've put his little rocker so that his feet match up with his rocker. Now you can leave the rocker off if you just want a little pony, and that's just fine. I've aligned his head to the marking that I had placed before, so I know he's rocking the right amount. I've added a little bridle, and this is done with embroidery floss, but you can use a thin ribbon, would also be darling. Seed bead for the eye, and that can be a French knot if you're worried about giving this quilt to a child, worried about the seed bead. Anyway, this is just a darling little pony. With the ponies rocking different ways, he just becomes such a real charming little quilt. And I hope you enjoy this pattern.